Hello, wonderful bio students. This is Miss Ewing, and this is a AP Bio Video Cast San Francisco edition. I'm sitting here at Presidio Park, which is an old Army base, and behind me I have the Pacific Ocean, and it's a beautiful, gloomy, wonderful San Francisco day. I do apologize if you hear some cars and background noise because there's a street just over there. Today's video is going to talk about species interactions. We've been kind of talking about how individuals of populations and populations interact with their abiotic components of the ecosystem. Well, today we're going to talk about how species interact with each other. The first thing that I want to bring to light is a term called symbiosis. Symbiosis. And this is just a long-term interaction between two different species. We would call this interspecific interaction, two different species. There are three types. We have mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. Here we have these newly discovered tiny single-celled algae. These are the algae right here that are living within a bacteria cell. So this would be the big bacteria cell. So this is newly discovered, so we're not really sure of the relationship, but this is symbiosis, two different species living together. The first type of symbiosis I'd like to talk about is commensalism. Now, commensalism is where one species is benefited, where the other one really doesn't have an effect. And it's actually kind of hard to find examples of this. But one that I think is pretty cool is army ants and specific bird species. So army ants are known for their aggressive foraging. They basically swarm in a kind of ant raid the forest floor, and in doing that, they're collecting tons of food and supplies for their nest, but they're also causing other insects to flee from their homes to escape the raid. And with that, a lot of times you'll see specific bird species. This is a Kentucky warbler following the army ant raids. And what they're doing is kind of reaping the benefits of the army ants stirring up all of those insects, and they're coming through and just kind of munching on all the insects that are fleeing from their homes. So the birds benefit, and the ants are really unaffected by the bird grabbing all those insects. The next type of symbiosis I'd like to talk about is mutualism. Now, mutualism is a plus-plus relationship, and this is where both organisms reap the benefit of the interaction. This is Spencer. Some of you have met Spencer. And me and Mr. Ewing, we live in a mutualistic relationship with Spencer. We feed him, we take him to the vet and get his shots, we provide him shelter, and in return, he poops in our backyard, harasses our guests, and barks at cars going by. But wait a second, that doesn't really sound like mutualism. Well, sometimes it can be mutually beneficial. Really, we love having Spencer. He's excited when we get home. He cuddles us on the couch, and he's super entertaining to just play with and watch. So he benefits because we take care of him, and we benefit because we have this little fuzzy thing that loves us, I guess. So that would be mutualism, a plus-plus relationship. Another example of mutualism is the ants and the acacia. Now, acacia, or sometimes pronounced acacia, is a tree found in the savanna in Africa, actually is where it's from. And there's also some species in Australia. So this is a plus-plus relationship. And the ants feed on yummy sugar produced by the acacia tree. So the tree is giving the ants food, and in return, the ants pretty much ferociously attack any insects that want to come on the tree. And these insects could be potentially harmful, carrying pathogens, or wanting to get some of the sap from the tree. So this is a really commonly referred to example of mutualism. Now I'd like to talk about parasitism. Okay, this is where one organism benefits at the expense of another organism. So it's a plus minus. This right here is a really gross picture. It's a juvenile cereal leaf beetle. And there's a whole class of wasps that are called parasitic wasps. They're little tiny wasps, and they lay their eggs inside of other organisms. So this beetle has had a parasitic wasp lay its eggs inside of the beetle, and then the eggs will hatch, and the larva, these little guys right here, this little thing that looks like a little grub, this is the wasp larva, and the larva feeds while the beetle is still alive, and eventually they grow and grow and grow, and they burst out of the beetle, killing it. So this beetle is kind of like a walking salad bar, I guess, for these wasps, for these wasp larvae. And so they get the benefit of the food, and once they grow big, they burst out of the beetle, killing it. So obviously the negative goes to the beetle, and the positive goes to the wasp. Another example of parasitism are two plants. Actually, there's a whole class of parasitic plants, and they're quite interesting. This is a dodder right here, and you can actually see this in our county. If you head out like the 58 towards California Valley, dodder is a parasitic plant, and it uses these little filaments called haustorium. And they are basically little penetrating little tubes that the dodder grows, and it puts the tubes into the tissue of other plants, and it basically lives off of the beneficial tissue of other plants, ultimately killing it. Another really famous parasitic plant is mistletoe, which we know as the kissing plant. However, it's highly parasitic. You can see it all over Paso. We've got it growing in trees. You can especially see it in the winter. You see it as big clumps kind of in trees that have lost their leaves. And they also use the haustorium little tubes and penetrate into the nutrient tissues of the plant and basically suck all the nutrients from the plant for itself. And mistletoe has been known to kill entire trees if a large infestation occurs. Now we're moving a little bit away from symbiosis, and we're looking at other species interactions. These aren't new to you, but I just wanted to shed some light on them. Competition is a species interaction where both don't benefit, right? So this is competition for mates, for food, for shelter, for water, any sort of competition. And this is an example of intra-specific competition. So this is specific. So specific being species, and intra meaning within. So within the same species. So in this situation, both kind of lose because they're fighting for a mate, or they're fighting for resources. Another type of competition is interspecific competition. We have interspecific competition, and that's competition between two different types of species. A very common war that we see in the savannah is a competition between hyenas and lions. They're both the top predator of their ecosystem, and they often compete for territories and food. Last but certainly not least, we have one of the biggest driving forces of evolution is predation. And for half of those involved, it's a negative species interaction. But we see, and you'll see in the next video, that the hunted develop mechanisms to evade predators, and the hunters develop large teeth, speed, and heightened sight or agility to help catch those predators. So predation is another species interaction. In review, we've talked about symbiosis, and commensalism is a plus and unaffected, where one species benefits, the other one is unaffected. Mutualism is where both are benefited. Parasitism is where one is benefited and the other is not. Competition is where neither benefit, and predation is really where one benefits and the one that's getting eaten or preyed upon doesn't. So thank you for joining me today in this special San Francisco edition of AP Biology videocast.